How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Set 6, and today we're going to be talking about a character that causes quite a bit of contention in the Final Fantasy VII community since Remake, and that's Zack. Now, I've been working on a video recently that is trying to look at what Zack's purpose could be in the overall story, but one thing that's kept coming up as I've been thinking about this and putting this video together has been, how is Zack where he is? How has Zack survived the last stand? And I think in order to properly answer the question of why is Zack alive, it's going to be very helpful at the very least to understand maybe not so much the mechanics of how he survived, but the person behind it or the entity behind it, because I don't think it's necessarily just happened as an accident. Although that is one of the possibilities, that this survival of Zack is an unforeseen circumstance. But there's a few hints in the game that kind of ruin that potential. We'll go over it in a second. But before we do that, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you subscribe for future content. We're getting close. We're getting closer to Rebirth. And as soon as we get any new information, I'm going to be out there hitting it. As soon as we get any information that kind of informs a new theory, I'm going to be all over it. So this is the place to be. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. But let's get on with it. So as I was just saying a second ago, there is the possibility that it's an accident and that Zack has kind of survived as just an unforeseen circumstance of everything that went down in Remake, be that Sephiroth's actions or our actions or just whatever. Whoever's actions it is, Zack somehow survives as an accidental byproduct of this. And initially I did think that that was a solid possibility. I have discussed it in theory videos before, but I don't know. I don't know if I missed this or my brain just didn't want to acknowledge it or if I'm wrong, who knows. But the main thing that we know about the Whispers is that whenever someone tries to change fate or destiny from its preordained path, the Whispers will appear in order to maintain the correct flow of time and flow of events. That's the Whispers' purpose. So then why, before Zack's even survived and before supposedly anything is different, why are the Whispers floating around the last stand? Like, we can see what's going on with Midgar in the background, and that makes me think that the events that happen at the end of Remake seem to happen to Midgar across all points in time, potentially, because there's no reason for that dome to be there unless that's the case. Just no reason whatsoever. But that doesn't explain why the Whispers are involved in the last stand, because you see a few of them just kind of floating in and around between the Shinra troopers who are facing Zack down. Why are they there? And there's only really one answer to that question, and that is because fate and destiny is about to deviate too far. And this is what's kind of making me think that someone had already done something that was going to ensure that Zack survived. Something had already been put in place, and that's why the Whispers are there. Now, quick disclaimer, don't get me wrong, it is possible that the Whispers are just behaving in a manner that we've not seen before, and it is the Whispers or the planet that ends up saving Zack. That's possible. But it doesn't really fit in with what we already know about the Whispers, whereas this belief does fit in with what we already know about the Whispers. This destiny had already been altered, and the Whispers were there potentially to try and stop that from happening, and then when we defeat the Whisper Harbingers at the end of Remake, the Singularity explodes, and the Whispers are no longer there to stop that destiny from changing. So yeah, that's where the mindset comes from, that destiny had already been changed a little bit and the Whispers were there to try and stop it. So then the question becomes, who has changed destiny? Who is it in this moment that has reached out and tried to stop Zack from going the way that he goes? Now, we can pretty much rule out Aerith, or at least the Aerith that we're interacting with in Remake, because she seems surprised at the vision. So we can rule Aerith out, we can rule any member of the party out that's there. Which leaves us with, I mean, let's be honest, it leaves us with one big stinking option, and that is Sephiroth. Now, in the previous video that I did, Chasing Clouds, check it out, it's a good one, I went over some possibilities regarding Cloud, and one of the main beliefs in that video was, is Sephiroth using Zack to accelerate Cloud's mental degradation? So, has Sephiroth made it so that Zack survives, and therefore throws Cloud's existence into turmoil when they eventually cross paths? Meaning that Sephiroth can just swoop in, grab Cloud, disappear off into the sunset with him, and convert him into a puppet, whatever he wants to do. Whatever he wants to do. But there is a possibility that Sephiroth has spared Zack in order to do that. I'm not too sure that's going to be the case though, because Sephiroth's pretty busy already. Sephiroth's quite busy. Sephiroth's got his own plan going on. I don't know if Zack factors into it or not. I think if he is trying to break Cloud, then it would help, but at the same time, Sephiroth seems to be doing quite a good job of messing with Cloud's brain on his own. So, is Zack needed for Sephiroth's plan? I don't know. Other possibilities include potentially this future Aerith consciousness that we encounter during Final Fantasy VII Remake. That's a possibility, but again, I'm not too sure how much control this Aerith has. You know, does she have the ability to exert change upon events that happened years and years ago? I'm not too sure. Sephiroth seems to. Sephiroth definitely seems to. He's already done it once, so if we're going off the what's most likely approach, Sephiroth is probably the most likely candidate at the minute. There's probably additional evidence that we'll get that will point to somebody else being the more likely candidate, but at the minute, it's Sephiroth. But if we step away from most likely candidate, there is pretty much only one other option that makes sense at the very least. And don't worry, I've got an option that doesn't make sense, we'll get to that. But as far as options that make sense, the only one that's left at this point would be Genesis. Now, I know that seems a little bit weird. We've not really got any kind of information on where Genesis is, what Genesis has been up to, or anything like that. The last point of seeing him in the Final Fantasy VII chronology is at the end of Dirge of Cerberus, when he kind of grabs Vice and swoops off into the night, saying that, he has much work to do. What is that work that Genesis has to do? We see the relationship that kind of forms and grows throughout Crisis Core between Genesis and Zack. It's a bit of a weird one, obviously, but there is a relationship and a bond that forms there. And in the end, Zack does kind of save Genesis. So would it be completely unreasonable to think that if Genesis was presented with an opportunity, that he would also save Zack and return the favour? I'm not 100% on this one because I'm not too sure how the opportunity would present itself for Genesis to do anything. And similar would go for, if you were to suggest Angeal from the live stream, it'd be about how the opportunity would present itself. Maybe, if it does turn out that Sephiroth's kind of sent his consciousness back in time, maybe the Genesis of that time frame, who would probably still be alive, I'd guess. Maybe he's noticed something and piggybacked on it and kind of jumped in that way or replicated it. I'm not too sure. The present day Genesis would be a bit of a mess because, he's just gone through everything. He's just been grabbed by Deep Ground. He's already going to be underneath Midgar by the point of Zack's last stand. So I'm not too sure if he could do anything there. Yeah, Genesis and Angeal would make sense as characters that are connected to Zack, but Angeal's obviously dead, and from the live stream he's probably not going to be getting up to too much. And Genesis, like I say, his estate is underneath Midgar, so he's probably not going to get up to too much. It would rely on some sort of futureness, some sort of Sephiroth level shenanigans in order for either of them to get involved, and I don't think that's going to be the case. I do think that Genesis is going to be involved in some way with like the overall narrative of Remake, and potentially even connected to what Sephiroth's done, in the initial stages in order to set these events in motion. Maybe Genesis is connected to that in some way, but as far as reviving Zack, not so much. So I was kind of reaching the end of my thought process on this, and then something happened. A weird little voice in the back of my head popped up and went, what about that Rufus Shinra fella? Yeah, what about him? What about that Rufus Shinra fella? Because Rufus is a bit of a mysterious entity in this whole thing. Like, he shows up towards the end, we don't know necessarily where he's been, and more importantly, he can see the whispers. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean anything because we have it established to us that people whose destiny is heavily intertwined with that of the planets will be able to see the whispers. But then the question kind of becomes, why is Rufus's destiny that heavily intertwined with the planets? I mean, I get it, he survives pretty much through the entire compilation if he is indeed the person that turns out to be funding the World Regenesis organisation in Dirge of Cerberus. It is suggested that it's him. I don't think it's canon, but I think it's pretty heavily hinted that it's Rufus that's funding that. I can't remember. I did play Dirge recently, but I've wiped most of it from my mind because, my god, that game. But yeah, Rufus. Sneaky Rufus boy who's always worked with Avalanche and worked against Shinra. What if for some reason he gets the inclination, the urge, the desire to save Zack?
That's why we see the Whispers swarming around the Shinra troops during the last stand, because Rufus has done something. Rufus, and I don't know why, like, this is the big stumbling block for this one. Why would Rufus do that? And the only possibility is that sneaky Rufus has somehow cottoned on to what Sephiroth's doing and piggybacked a message to himself? I don't know. Like, honestly, I don't know. But it popped into my head, and it's a pretty interesting possibility. I'm going to try and do a little bit more digging on this one and see if I can find anything that would kind of support Rufus doing this. But yeah, it's just something that's popped into my head over the last couple of days while I've been doing this Zack video. And it was the final thing that pushed me over the edge into, let's just do a video just thinking about who or what is responsible for Zack's survival. Forget the reasons, just who or what could it be? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you have another option other than those? What do you think about crazy Rufus doing crazy things? I don't know. I've just got a weird feeling about it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget, like, subscribe, share the video, do all the things, help the channel grow. But more importantly than anything, have a great day.